How you doing, everyone? Just sitting here waiting to get my hair cut. So you can tell I'm a little long now. A lot of stuff's been going on lately, so I want to do a quick video. Not that it'll be that short, but this is mainly for my friends and family, just to kind of clue you guys in on some of the stuff that's going on. I know a lot of my friends, especially my veteran friends, are probably following this stuff and aware of it, but for my family and friends that may not follow stuff like this, some of the stuff that's happened in the last few days, I know you've probably seen snippets of it on the media and whatnot, but there's a lot going on in this country right now, and I just want everybody to do what they have to do to be prepared. And I talk about this all the time, doing disaster response when we do the hurricane response and relief stuff. You should always have stuff, food, batteries, flashlights, all this stuff that you would normally, and there's a bunch of resources online. I'm not going to go into that now, but the reason I want to emphasize that right now is because we've kind of crossed into a space, and some of you may not realize it, and this isn't a conspiracy theory. This is in the military. If you're a good soldier and if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, you're always planning for the worst case scenario. What is the worst thing that could possibly happen? You hope it doesn't happen, but you have to be prepared for it, and you have contingency plans for that. Also, being a soldier, you want to plan to inflict the worst possible scenario on the other guy. So you have to realize that is what may be going on right now, and I'll go into that in a minute. There's a lot of things that have happened right now, and it started just a brief rundown of the going into coronavirus. Coronavirus hit us. It's debatable whether it was intentional or not intentional, whether it was man-made, not man-made. I'm not even going to touch on that stuff right now. It's here. It started, we know now from blood work that was taken, that it was in this country as early as November. We didn't find out about it until January. The latest thing that's going on is this supposedly Russian, you don't know, the hacking that just went on of the government systems. The Department of Treasury, Commerce Department, other branches, they hacked into Los Alamos. They actually, I've seen reports and I've heard people testifying that they actually got into and have hacked the power grid. So, I mean, this is stuff that the Chinese and the Russians and other actors have tried for years. They try every day. They ping us. They try and get in. I'm not a tech guy, but I'm aware of what goes on here. I couldn't give you the real fine details, but I knew that they have been doing this for a long time. But what I do know is that our infrastructure is not as secure or as robust as people think it is. Especially the electrical grid. That's one of the things. Now, if the people in Washington are this worried, they would normally not talk about this stuff. They don't let you know all this stuff that goes on a day-to-day basis. If they came out and said that they are this worried about the hack that just occurred and that it has been going on since spring, they just detected this stuff now. They actually came out and they said themselves that it will take them years to figure out exactly how deep and how much damage has been done. That should worry everyone. One thing I want to touch on about government agencies and working for the government, people tend to, who haven't worked with them or don't know how the government works, tend to think that the government is some omnipotent being that can solve all problems, and there's always somebody watching something 24/7. They've got this covered and everything, and you don't need to worry about it. That's not the case. They do have people working on it, but the other guys have people working too. Again, going back to the point I made earlier, the other guy is looking to make your life as hard as possible for whatever reason. That's for another video. But you've got all this stuff going on now. And a lot of people don't realize, it was a brief thing in the news last week or a week and a half ago. The Russians tested new weapons capable of taking out satellites. Now, if you know how the U.S. military works, everything is based off GPS. from where the missiles fly, targeting stuff. All that stuff is based off of GPS systems. Now they may have some other stuff that they've come up with in the meantime that I don't know about, but a lot of the military stuff, positioning, everything works off GPS. So, and also all your cell phones, all these, it's all satellite communication. So if they were able to do that and knock out internal communications, I don't know if you guys remember a little while back where the U.S. and the Israelis supposedly were able to get a worm into the Iranian nuclear program, and that was able to mess with the centrifuges, and they were able to set back and cripple the Iranian nuclear program. Well, we know, and the government has already said that the Russians got into our electrical grid. They broke into Los Alamos, which is where we do all our nuclear development for weapons and things like that. But they also got into the power grid. It's been hacked. So you don't know if they've put a worm in there that might hide. Like they said, they won't know for a few years how much damage has been done. There might be a worm in there now that gradually does stuff or causes, I don't know what could cause outages, could cause a surge, blow out transformers. I'm actually looking at one right now, one of the relay stations right across the street there. People don't realize that, like the medications that we found out aren't made in the U.S., we don't make any transistors, the transformers that you see on the light posts and the big ones that transport all our electricity. All those are made in China. So if there was to be a power surge and a lot of those were to blow, you can't replace them readily. So you're going to be down. You're going to be without power for a long time. Now, people think, oh, well, the lights are out. It also does a lot of other things. All your traffic lights go out. Most of your gas stations, unless they have a generator, they can't pump fuel. When I was in Iraq in 2003, the entire country basically had no power. Now, I was in Baghdad. I was all over the country, but in Baghdad, you had a city of 5 million people that had no power, and none of the gas stations worked. They couldn't pump the fuel that was in the tanks in the ground, so they had to find a way to siphon it out. So just trying to speed this up a little bit. If they can shut down the electrical grid, that shuts down, it at least inflicts damage on your traffic system, your ability to move things, which all the food in this country moves by truck. So if you can tie up that transportation and cause food shortages, people start to panic. That's when you get civil unrest, which you've seen some of right now with the election. That's an entire different thing, what's going on with the election and what may happen on January 6th. What I'm saying is, what I'm getting at is there's a lot of chaos going on right now, a lot of chaos. And just think worst case scenario. What is the worst thing that could happen? Now, I'm not doing this to fearmonger or saying that it is going to happen, but the possibility is there, and the things we're seeing right now already have happened. Things I just told you about have happened, and the government has admitted them. Now, I've worked with FEMA before doing the disaster stuff. People think FEMA is this big thing. People talk about FEMA camps and bullshit. That's all bullshit. FEMA couldn't find their ass with both hands. Seriously, they have enough trouble trying to respond to 2 simultaneous hurricanes at the same time. That in 2 localities, so in two states, 2 areas infected. Can you imagine if the electrical grid went down in this entire country? At least people don't realize how the grid is broken down. It's in a few sections. Texas has their own, but then you've got the East Coast, West Coast, basically. If you could hack even one of those to shut down the economic damage, the Chinese don't need to go to a shooting war with us. If you can just cripple us a little bit, enough to where the U.S. currency is no longer the reserve currency, enough to hurt us to where they step up and they become number one. That's what they're looking to do. It's in their doctrine. They've written it down. They've told everyone what they wanted to do. I'm not making this stuff up. Like I said, it's not a conspiracy theory. Their goal is to be number one. You people you're living in history right now, and the people in 1938, 1939 thought, oh, well, Hitler just wants a little more living space and whatnot, and he's not going to do anything. Hitler also made himself Führer, leader for life. Xi Jinping in China has also made himself president for life. So he's not going anywhere. He's expanding the military. I won't get into that right here. what I want is for my friends and my family to know that you should be ready already. I mean, you should always be ready in case of a natural disaster or anything else. But right now, especially, stock up on your food, non-perishable stuff, rice, beans, things that you can live on for a long time that's relatively cheap. I know all my friends, you've got your guns and ammo. Just be prepared, because things are gonna get freaky, possibly. Even if nothing major like that happens, you've still got what's going on with the election, which maybe I'll touch on that now. We're at 10 minutes now. The election, what can happen on the 6th is, and this has happened before, there is precedent, when the electoral votes are supposed to be counted in the Senate by Vice President Pence, he opens the envelopes and counts the votes. If a member of the House objects and a member of the Senate, then both sides have to, it's a joint session of Congress, both sides have to separate, and they go in and they debate on their own side about awarding electoral votes, and then they come back and they decide. So what you have now is you have 7 states that have sent basically dueling their electoral votes, their electoral representatives. They're sending different ones. So you have a slate of Republicans and a slate of Democrats from 7 different states. Now, when they go into on the January 6th, when they go in there, it's up to Congress then. If there is a controversy, Congress gets to decide what to do as far as, and that breaks down a couple different ways. The senators vote. Each senator gets a vote. On the House side, each state, so the 50 states, there's 50 votes. Each state gets 1 vote. And the Republicans, it's based on their legislature, their state legislature. And the Republicans have the majority there, and they hopefully will hold the majority in the House, or excuse me, in the Senate. So if they vote that way, Donald Trump can be awarded those electoral votes. The Republican electors, those votes would be counted then, and that would Donald Trump would get his second term. If you see that, then you have to worry about the left rioting, Antifa, Black Lives Matter, all that stuff going on. But I think that will be put down very quickly this time. There won't be any dicking around like they did all this summer, trying to be nice and play with these guys. And I think you're also going to see a bunch of people on the right just not taking it anymore and taking care of that problem. But the fact is that you've seen a lot of stuff going on in the courts where the media keeps telling you, oh, the courts are throwing this out and Donald Trump's been embarrassed and all this other stuff. He hasn't. They haven't thrown anything out on the merits. They have not heard any of the evidence. They have done it on procedural matters, saying that, oh, you don't have standing, this and that. And a lot of this is because judges, like everyone else, are human and they're scared. There was a report yesterday. One of the Texas representatives spoke yesterday before a legislative body, and he said that he was in there and they actually heard John Roberts in a closed meeting of the Supreme Court. They heard John Roberts screaming through the wall about riots and things that he was worried about happening. That right there, ladies and gentlemen, is cowardice. Not doing the right thing because you're worried about what may happen on the street. The bigger problem is, if you don't address this through the courts, is what's going to happen from the right. Because the right is not going to come and break windows and chant in the street and beat drums and go looting and stuff. The right is going to come with rifles and actually demand that this be done the right way. That's where you're headed. There's a lot of potential for a lot of bad things to happen. Hopefully the courts will get this straight. Congress will man up and do what they're supposed to do. There was one of the people who did the audit on the machines in Michigan. Georgia just today announced a full statewide audit of ballots. There is no way that Joe Biden got 80 million votes. It just didn't happen. I'm sorry if you voted Democrat and you think that and you think that's a conspiracy theory. It's not. There is no way in the world. Joe Biden couldn't get 80 people in the parking lot the other day when he went down to Georgia to campaign in the Senate races. Joe Biden couldn't get, literally, there was not 80 people that came out to see this supposedly the most popular politician ever in the history of the world. Joe Biden didn't get 80 million votes. Votes were changed via the machines, and also significant amounts of fraudulent ballots were put in. And I talked about this months ago when I started getting ballot requests at my house, and I explained to you how mail-in voting was very easily corruptible. So I know I sound like I'm preaching here. A lot of you guys already know this. Some of you don't. Kind of lost my train of thought there. The election itself. The guy who did the audit on the machines in Michigan came out and actually said that they are 3 weeks ahead of what's being reported in the media right now, meaning that they have information that is just now being reported. They knew that 3 weeks ago, and they said that they definitely have information that the machines were hacked during the election, and it was by China. And I've also heard that for whatever reason, Pakistani intelligence may have been involved. Now, if anybody knows our relationship with the Pakistanis, it's a love-hate relationship, and that we've never been on good terms with their intelligence, their intelligence agency. So you did have manipulation of the votes. Now, I know that's going to upset a lot of you, and they say, "Oh no, Trump won." Fuck all that. Just forget about all that shit and just worry about what you need to do to keep your head on your straight and keep your family safe during whatever happens during this. But hopefully it gets straightened out by the legal process. But what that also takes is the legal process. The founders were absolute geniuses how they laid this out, because they knew this could happen. They knew it was a possibility. When they laid all this out, the one thing that they didn't so much account for is cowardice on the side of the people who were actually running the show. And that's what you have a lot of as far as the judges are concerned, and a lot of people in Congress. Probably 80-90% of the people in Congress should not be there. They're not leaders. And you saw what's happening now, and this is another thing too. All the spies, all the stuff that just came out, and it was released through a Russian media source, or not a Russian, an Australian media source, and now it's being picked up here. We know Swalwell was compromised. We know that he was sleeping with the Chinese agent. They've gone down to literally the local level of politicians to get into influence stuff all the way up. They have 1.4 billion people. They said they have 2 million people in Western governments that they've sent out in at every level, and lots of them are here. There is 350,000, I believe was the number, Chinese students right now on student visas in our universities, stealing information, reporting back. And by Chinese law, they must report back to the government. Every Chinese citizen is to spy for the government. That is their law. That's I'm not making it up. Look it up. So every time you see a Chinese student, a foreign exchange student, that student who's here on a visa is technically a spy. Now, they may not be overt, they may be rinky-dink stuff, but all these people you see at all these universities, the technological advancements that are being made, all that information is going back to China. It's being stolen right out from under you. That needs to be addressed, but you have a bunch of cowards in Congress that are possibly compromised. Now, what Pelosi did, after knowing that Swalwell was compromised, and then put him on the Intelligence Committee, where he had access to all these documents. Not only was he sleeping with a Chinese spy, she also put an intern in his office. And they came out. They do not do background checks on interns on Capitol Hill. That means there's possibly a bunch of people running around, foreign spies, in the Capitol with access to information, walking around with thumb drive. You know how sloppy these people are. They're politicians. They think their shit doesn't stink. The vast majority of them have never been in the military, don't know what fucking OPSEC is. Operational security. I know I'm preaching to a lot of you, the choir. But if you didn't have this beaten into you when you were 18 years old, that if you talk about things, even simple things, you can't talk about the smallest grain, because that smallest grain can be put together with the smallest grain they got over here, and eventually a big picture starts to come. So even however small you think it is and however insignificant you think it is, the other side can glean information from that, which means you need to shut your fucking mouth, do your goddamn job. And these people that are in there, they just don't have a clue. They're there for the power and for themselves and for the prestige. They don't give a fuck about this country. And like I said, you think these people are there to do the right thing and the government has all this stuff covered and everything. They don't. The government is made up of people, individuals, and people, and unfortunately, a lot of people who tend to work for the government in these bureaucracies are not the best people. They're middle of the road. They can stamp the fucking envelopes and do whatever they have to do, but they're not the best and the brightest, because a lot of them, if they had to go in the private sector, they couldn't produce. They would be fired. They'd be let go. They couldn't compete. They couldn't produce. So they're in that safety net, which is basically, welfare. They just get it a different way, a paycheck through the government, just a different way of getting it. Entirely different story. But if you think that the government knows everything and can protect everything, and is there going to be, if the grid did go down, you think the government FEMA is going to show up in 50 states? It's impossible. They don't have the capability. If you think that there's going to be enough police or National Guard to quell any, if it was a nationwide emergency, there's not enough people. Mathematically, it doesn't work. What I'm just telling you is be prepared. Have your food and everything ready. Have everything you need. We're in winter now, and a lot of people say, well, even if the power goes out, well, guess what? Everyone that I know has a furnace in their house. Most of them here in the Chicago area run off natural gas. That's fine. Natural gas might be able to get through, but then again, if the grid goes down, they may not be able to get the gas to you. Also, your furnace runs on electricity. Your blower motor, all that stuff is electric. So I hope you have a fireplace and access to wood. There's just so much to go into. Just plan for the worst, hope for the best. Hopefully we get through this. One other thing I meant to touch on before is that if the electrical grid goes down and that affects transportation, that affects your airplanes and everything else. What's traveling by airplane and by truck right now? All the vaccine. Slow down your vaccine, you increase the effects of the virus. Like I said, this may or may not be a coordinated effort, but you may have just seen the first shots in a cyber war, and a cyber war can be more deadly and damaging to a country than an actual shooting war. So we may or may not be at war right now. That's above my pay grade, but I just, for my friends, my family, just know the situation. Again, this is not a conspiracy theory. This is connecting the dots. I was up till 5 this morning. I couldn't fall asleep last night after I received some of the reports and watched what some of the testimony was about what they actually know went on, and who the actors are, and whether it's coordinated. It could just be a bunch of people that don't like you and they're poking you from 7 different directions, and it's not coordinated. But each little cut does damage, and if enough cuts where you have to take a step back and heal yourself, well, that allows China to step up as the world's biggest economy. And if our currency, if they replace the dollar as the world currency, you're going to see a big change in our economic power, our ability to do things. A lot of your costs for everything you have is going to probably go up. As long as I'm rolling here, I'll just keep going. We're at 23 minutes, almost 24. The whole China thing, the Hunter Biden laptop, which a lot of people, they said almost 10 to 15% of Joe Biden voters said that they would have changed their vote had they known about this. It's been suppressed by the media. The media a lot of it is owned and funded by the Chinese Communist Party. Again, not a conspiracy theory, just follow the fucking money. The Biden family has gotten tons of money. I'm going to actually do a video later. I've got to dig out a photograph from the 1980s, and I'll show you just how crooked Biden was back then. And this is something I can actually tell you because it's related to my family. I can tell you the Bidens are crooked. Joe Biden is mentally incompetent right now. He is compromised. He should not be taking that office. Kamala Harris is not qualified to take over from him. She just said this morning, the biggest threats that face this country are climate change, social injustice, racial inequality. These are things that have been drilled into people that we have this big problem. We don't have a fucking problem. We don't have a problem with that shit. If you just look at this country, if you take a step back and sure, there's individual instances, but as a whole, we do not have a huge racial or social injustice problem. It's not, there's no one out there who can look at me and say, oh, Eric, you have a right that I don't have. We all have the exact same rights. Now, you may have more money than me. I may have more money than you. That's not about equality. That's about you have the opportunity to go out and make your own way. That's not about that. But I'll try and stay on the election stuff. Joe Biden and his entire family is compromised with the Chinese. Hunter Biden was in bed with a Chinese energy company that they have the emails. He asking for $10 million, and he was involved in other ways. Excuse me, also, and he was involved in Burisma, Ukrainian energy. Now think about this: you're involved in these foreign energy enterprises. Biden comes in and says, he's already said this during the campaign, that about fracking, and then he said, oh no, we're not going to stop fracking. And then he said, well, we're only going to stop fracking on public lands. So that's something that Trump lifted, that they could actually go onto government lands and frack to get. This is why we're energy independent right now, why we don't have to fight wars in the Middle East, why we can isolate ourselves a little bit from that, and we're secure. All the things, the medication, the electrical transformers, all these things, energy, all the things that keep this country running, we need to make right here. We need to keep right here. If we don't keep it right here, we're vulnerable, and we are vulnerable right now. They've got us over a barrel. Because we realized that the medications, they started to try and get that production hasn't come back here yet. So we're over a barrel. If we did go to war right now, if there was a cyber war that caused a lot of problems and they shut us off from medications, there's a whole lot of people, a whole lot of sick people and old people going to die without their medications. So we're over a barrel right now. So we're kind of limited even in the response we can take to these attacks. So I'm telling you right now, just pay attention to what's going on and take care of those around you, and hopefully we'll get through this. Hopefully, the only way this gets better is if Trump gets a second term. That's the only way a lot of this stuff gets exposed, the stuff that's going on. They're calling for congressional hearings right now to see exactly what the influence is, how deep spies got into Congress. Talking about Nancy Pelosi before with Swalwell, and Dianne Feinstein, California senator, had for 20 years had a Chinese spy as her driver, her personal aide. 20 years, they were deep. So all these people are from the San Francisco area, large Chinese population in the San Francisco area. It's very easy to infiltrate these people, and they come as students. This spy that came and got Swalwell came here as a student on a student visa. They're into you. They got their hooks into you, and it's death by 1,000 cuts, and it's a long-term solution. I've talked about this in other videos, that the Chinese don't look at, hey, the 4-year election cycle or 2-year election cycle. The Chinese look at, hey, in 50 years, where can we be? In 25 years, where can we? This has been going on for the last 25 years. They're well into this. Donald Trump caused them to have their worst economic year in 50 years last year because of what he did with tariffs and calling them out on their bullshit as far as trade and intellectual property theft. The Chinese knew that 4 more years of Trump was going to set their plan way back and possibly expose it, possibly take them back. Now you started to see in Hong Kong, and this got repressed, you started to see a lot of the freedom, the democracy movement. Those people were waving American flags because they're hoping to get that. We need to be fomenting that stuff in mainland China also. We need to be fomenting their people to say, hey, your government's going to lead you down the wrong way. That's how you fight this, just like they're doing in Iran. You turn them against the mullahs and the ayatollah. You get the people to rise up and say, hey, we don't want to die in a mushroom cloud, and we don't like what you're doing. The Chinese people aren't the problem. It's the Chinese government, Communist Party of China. For all of us older Cold Warriors, we know what communism is. We train to fight it. We know how they are. We know our history. When we tell you, the people who think that today, I mentioned this earlier, You're living in history right now. This is literally 1938, and the Chinese are taking the place of the Nazis. Now, instead of them, they have a lot of influence on the media. Goebbels is now the mainstream media and big tech. They're pumping information in you right now and censoring outside information. Just look at what they're doing. And most people are picking up on this now, but if you didn't know this years ago, you need to. This is just like the German people. German people in the 1930s were one of the most advanced countries in the world. Most advanced, populous, most industrious people in the history of the world. How could an educated populace like that fall under Hitler's sway? It starts small. It starts with things like your brown shirts and your black shirts. I'm sorry, like I said, I'm waiting to get a haircut. Your brown shirts and your black shirts. Well, that's your Antifa and your BLM right now in the streets. Those are your street thugs that intimidate people and get you, oh, I don't want to say anything. And then they censor you on the media. And you're not allowed to speak up and you're not allowed to say anything. And if you question Black Lives Matter, somehow you're a fucking racist. Well, that's it. They try and shut you up, you know, by putting these labels on you. You got to stop. You got to tell them go fuck themselves. You know, say what you know is right is right. If it feels wrong, it's probably fucking wrong. But you've got Goebbels right now is the mainstream media and and big tech. They're censoring you and they're pounding you every day. Trump is bad. Trump is bad. Trump is bad. Trump is bad. Republicans are bad. Racist. Social injustice. Racial injustice. Social injustice. Racial injustice. This country is racist. America is bad. They've already started tearing down statues. Now you got this high school out in San Francisco that wants to change the name of Abraham, calling Abraham Lincoln a racist. When you erase the history, and the Chinese did this, the Chinese communists did this in the 1940s. The Chinese, and you're probably going to say that when we get in all this chaos and shit, you're probably going to see the Chinese make a military move on Taiwan to take it back. That'll be their test run for larger operations, but they want that back, and they're building the military to do it. So this would be a good time when we're distracted and we've got a lot of internal, and we don't know what happened with our internal systems. We don't know how vulnerable we are right now. We don't know what they know. It's very scary. I mean, like I said, not to worry. I mean, just keep your powder dry and you should be okay. I'm gonna end this here. I went way long. I've got so much just to put out there, but you gotta follow this stuff, and please stop watching the fucking mainstream media. If you're getting your news from, you can click in to watch one side and then flip over to a more conservatively. They call it conservative. They call it right-wing media. The only reason it seems right-wing to them is because the other side is so fucking far left that anything is right to them. I mean, the centers. But Fox is kind of stepped on their own dicks, and that's because of the Murdochs. But anyway, you can get some balanced stuff from Fox. You'll get Fox. Tune into Newsmax. Tune into One American News. Listen to WLS on the radio here in Chicago. Listen to some conservative voices to get the other side. If you're a liberal, Democrat, get the other side. If you don't see the other side, you're not going to be able to balance these things and see, well, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense. If all you listen to is ABC, NBC, CBS, MSNBC, and CNN, and get your stuff from the New York Times and the Washington Post, you're not getting the full picture, and you can't make an educated fucking decision about any of this stuff. So take care of your families, get your fucking food, have your stuff ready, be able to fucking heat your house. If you got to go to the goddamn forest preserve and drag some dead trees out and cut them up and throw them in the back of your car, you know, be able to take care of yourself. Winter's coming, and a lot of shit going on. All right, that's it for now. I'll talk to you guys later.